All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Insight interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined from across the pond, as they like to say here in the US, by Victoria Bennion, who is in Dorset, lovely Dorset in the UK. How are you doing, Victoria?
I'm very well, thank you, John. How are you?
Excellent. And Victoria is the founder of the best podcast guest booking agency, where she helps expert business owners and authors build authority, grow their audience, and drive business growth through strategic podcast interviews. Host of the Best Guest Podcast, co-host of the Autism Mums podcast, and co-author of the most amazing marketing book ever by Mark Schaefer and Friends. And we're going to talk today about leveraging podcast interviews. So I've been podcasting for quite a while, Victoria, since about 2018. And I noticed like around COVID, you started to get this kind of growth or explosion of people wanting to start podcasts or be on podcasts. And post COVID, it's really kind of accelerated. But I still think today a lot of people still don't understand the value of business people being on podcasts, and executives going on podcasts, and business owners going on podcasts, or even starting podcasts. So why do you think it is that it's still a little bit kind of, some people still think, well, it's a little bit vanity, it's a little bit PR, but it's not really strategic?
I think it's maybe because it's still fairly new in terms of media. And I certainly have lots of calls with people who think of going on podcasts as mainstream media. Like, so their first questions are, how big is the podcast? What's the download numbers?
Mm-hmm.
And they're missing so many pieces of the puzzle there. All these things that it can help you with.
Yeah, because it's because, especially because we live in a world of vanity metrics, right? I mean, everybody wants to, everybody wants to, when they stick their Instagram story up, they're immediately looking how many views, how many people looked at it. And unfortunately, as you said, the same thing translates over. But people don't realize that, from a business point of view, as you would well know and better than I, it's not always about volume. It's not about views. It's often about getting in front of the right audience, or it's about creating content that can be leveraged elsewhere.
Yeah, 100%. There's so many benefits, aren't there? And I think there's the backlinks that you often get when you're a guest on podcasts, and that's going to help you show up better in the search engines. There's that credibility piece. If someone's searching you before they speak to you, they come on a sales call and they might want to have a little look first. They can see these podcasts that you've done, listen to you beforehand. And we certainly have clients of ours saying that they've had calls with people who have been, pre-sold essentially, because they've decided they're the right person for them. So they're great differentiators.
Talk to me a little bit about the concept of borrowing trust from podcast hosts.
Yeah, well, I think when a host has you on their show, they are lending you that credibility. It's an endorsement. It's an unspoken endorsement.
Yeah.
So that host, you have listeners that tune into every episode, and you're that common thread. And when you bring on a guest, you're sort of vouching for them, quite, without saying it, you're vouching for them. And the listeners then will just kind of they'll take that trust. Bob John said Victoria's all right, and like, you can't put a price on that. I mean, I've certainly worked with clients there was a lovely lady, Donna, and we booked her on a podcast. So it was the right niche for her. So she talks to widows about finance. And when that interview went live, she told me that she signed 2 clients straight away, because part of that endorsement from the host, from this community that trusted the host, it wasn't huge, wasn't massive, but it was the right people.
And I think that's so important, Victoria, as we said a moment ago, is that you understand what is the right podcast for you. And instead, I mean, people often would, I want to be on the biggest and the best. And you go, yeah, number one, you're probably not going to get on that. But number two, it's probably not the right place for you. And you're going to get a lot more return if you niche yourself, if you really focus it on target. And again, keep away from the vanity metrics and look for, are you getting in front of the people that you really want to get in front of?
Yeah, and sometimes the host is a great connection for you. We've
Mhm.
certainly had one of our clients in the health space. He went on a podcast, again, a fairly small podcast, and he sold a high ticket course, and the host bought the course. So it's a
Yeah.
great return on investment if you're looking at it that way.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. I mean, I have had people on my podcast, exactly your situation, where afterwards I've been like, huh, that's really interesting. And I've actually talked to them about what they do and what they offer, and some of them even engage with or may in the future. So yeah, you never know. And especially if the host is excited about what you're talking about, then the audience is going to get excited.
Yes, 100%, 100%.
Yeah. So what is it when you start working with people to get them on podcasts? What's some of the piece of advice you give to them in order for them to be best prepared for this?
Uh, to be best prepared, I think it's really important to educate them a little bit about how to connect with the audience. So some people are inclined to show up and think they have to sell. They have to
Mhm.
sell their product, keep talking about their book, keep talking about, like, buy my book, buy my book, buy my
Yeah.
book. So that's certainly one of the first pieces of advice that we give them is don't do that. Um,
Yes.
share stories, add value. Um, you certainly don't go on about selling. What you want is that connection. See your podcast interview as that first step with the listener.
Mhm.
If they connect with you, they want to learn more, have a good call to action at the end where they can join your world. If that's your newsletter or if you're active on social media, send them there. And then when they're ready to buy, obviously some people will think this is the person I want to work with when they hear the interview, but others won't, but they might down the line. So
Mhm.
if you send them somewhere that you can nurture them, that's kind of a good strategy.
Mhm. And I think one of the other things too is helping people get comfortable with just having conversations, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
for me, that's the essence of podcasts. That's what I like doing about it. It's just having interesting conversations. And the way I like to look at this podcast, for instance, Victoria, is I like to think of it, it's a conversation between two people. And it's like I always liken it to, if you're sitting on a plane or something and there's two people in front of you and you're on your own and they're having this fascinating conversation and you're just listening in. And that's what I like to tell people when they come on. It's like, yeah, we're just going to have a conversation that other people are going to listen in on.
I like that. I think that's very true. And also because sometimes we've had clients who think, oh my God, it's like public speaking,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
not, is it? It's that it's one-on-one, which
Mhm.
makes it so comfortable and something that, most people can do.
Yeah, yeah. And what about when people, like, some people get very guests, like they want everything very structured. They want, like, do you have the questions? What's going to happen? Personally, I very rarely do I do that unless somebody really insists upon it, because I feel like it takes away from the authenticity, or it takes away also from who knows where the conversation is going to go. So how do you advise the people that you work with, especially if you get somebody who's so like, I need everything to be completely structured.
Yeah, that did happen early on actually.
Mhm.
When I was early to booking them, I did have a client and she was an author. So she was great at the written word, so nervous about showing up that she wanted to advance questions and she wanted to write out her answers so that she could read them, which obviously does not make the best podcast.
No.
So what we did was add some more supportive elements to our packages. So we work with our clients on their talking points, like think through what it is that you want to talk about. What do you want to convey? How can you illustrate that? Do you have a great story that
Mhm.
you could share? Do you have any facts that you could share? And then they work with a speech coach. Usually they have a session just where they can practice it, and we give them a practice. And I think it's really about knowing that you might feel a little bit uncomfortable
Mhm.
to start with, but once you've done a handful of interviews, it gets easier. But that is definitely not the way to go when you advance questions and to script it all out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's like anything else in life. Your first few are probably going to, yeah, I mean, hey, you might hit it out of the park, right out of the gate. But, if not, you're going to evolve over time and just learn and watch it back and don't get embarrassed about yourself. Just like figure out things that you can maybe want to improve upon, or whatever. But I think you have to see it as a journey. Like even as a guest, like I see it as a journey as a host, but even as a guest, you got to see it as a journey, and you learn. And different hosts are gonna be different, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And different hosts are going to have a different style and they're going to ask you different things, which can be a good thing because it makes you think about things in a different way. And like you were saying about content, it gives you different angles on your content that you can use.
Yeah, and talking of content, like we said earlier, what are some of the ways that people can leverage like a podcast beyond just the podcast? Because I think sometimes people think about, I appear on the podcast gets released, I share it out, they share it out, and we all move on.
Yeah, you can totally repurpose your podcast. And some shows will give you the raw file, they'll give you the assets
Mhm.
that they create, and you can share them across your platform, which helps you have that visibility with your own audience. And it helps you expand your audience, and it gives you content, which, you know, it's a lot to create content. And a podcast can be a great core piece that you can turn into a blog post. You can
Yep.
send it out on your newsletter. You can take quote posts, you can do video clips, you can do so much, carousel posts, all from these different interviews that you're doing, these different conversations. So it's great. It's like a fresh stream of content.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's fantastic. And think about it. I mean, you go on a 30, 20, 25, 30-minute podcast or whatever, and then that 30 minutes can turn into all of these different assets and can be used in various different ways. And I think that's the other thing too, sometimes, Victoria, is I don't think there's a disconnect sometimes in organizations. Say they say, oh, executive, yeah, go on the podcast, but the marketing department are not that. Maybe PR got them that. Marketing isn't that tuned in. Sales isn't that tuned in. They don't realize that they have an asset here that could actually be leveraged in their sales activities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's
And I think the other thing about leveraging content in that way is validation, isn't it? Because people are looking to connect with organizations today. They want to see who's behind it, who's involved in it, all of that kind of stuff. One of the best ways of humanizing your organization is getting your people on podcasts.
yeah, 100% agree with you. It's one of the ways that people know if you're the right people to work with, because it's showing that other side and getting that. It's more in-depth conversation, isn't it, than if you were looking just on social media or on their website at the photos or something. You actually
Yeah.
hear how someone talks and what they think of things, and yeah, so helpful.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's where you can really bring your expertise alive. And I think the other thing too, as you mentioned earlier, is like, don't go on these podcasts and try to go into like turbo sales mode, because that just switches people off. Is the other thing is like storytelling and being interesting. But how often do you have to tell people just to be themselves? Because I've come across this sometimes when people think I have to put on a persona or I need to act in a particular way. And I always go, no, just be yourself. If you don't try and be a comedian if you're not funny, right? I mean, not everybody
Yeah.
is blessed with with snappy humor, right? Plus humor is very subjective anyway, and you're on a global platform. And if you're very serious and deeply analytical, be serious and deeply analytical, because that will resonate with some people.
That's it, and you'll attract the right people, and you'll repel the people that aren't a good fit to work with you. So it's always best to be yourself.
Yeah. Do you sometimes have to kind of coach people out of like trying to adopt a persona, or think that
Yes.
they suddenly have to go big when
And also just really unnatural answers. If,
Mhm.
as I say, we have the speech coach who does sessions, but she'll say sometimes it's more that they give such canned responses that they're used to giving out, and it's actually break that down and give them more what you really think, and natural, and think about it and answer it and show
Yeah.
who you are. For sure.
And I think the other thing too is people are often so hung up on trying to come across like they're an expert, that they know so much. Whereas I find it more interesting when you have somebody who's got an expertise in an area, but they're a little bit stumped. I mean, I don't mean like completely stumped, but they're like, that's an interesting. I hadn't thought of that. And then you see them thinking on the fly and actually considering something that maybe is new. Then you start to go, oh wow, this person really is a genuine expert, because I don't trust experts who pretend they know everything. I think that disqualifies them immediately.
Yeah, no one knows everything.
Yeah. So I like it when you see people like thinking on the fly or being a little bit and I think that's something you obviously have to make your get the people who you work with comfortable with being in a space where you may get a question that you don't know the answer to, but that's okay.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think it's always okay to say, I don't know the answer to that. Can I go away and
Yeah.
get back to you with an answer on that? I've not thought about that before. Yeah, we've certainly had people raise that as their worries at the beginning of doing podcast interviews. But what if they ask me something I don't know? So that's okay.
Yeah, no, I've been asked some really interesting questions because I go on other people's podcasts sometimes, and I've been asked some questions where I've just gone, "Wow, that's a very interesting question. I'm not sure I know. I'm not sure I have an answer for that right now."
Yeah, if you're a politician, you'd be like, now you just steer it into your own
Yeah, I
agenda.
would just
You
tell you
just
exactly.
answer whatever
Repeat,
you think.
yeah, just repeat my policies. Yeah, ad
That's it.
nauseum, even though you asked me a completely different question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
So are you seeing a major kind of uptick now, and are you seeing like it's starting to mainstream this in because I think the place it hasn't really. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs, small business, all of those people have jumped on this. Larger corporations, as yet, I still think there's a little bit resistance in the C-suite to really put themselves out there.
I'd agree. I can say in a trend that we've had more calls with the larger corporations or
Right.
their PR agencies who are looking to get them on podcasts, but there's such a lack of understanding about how this strategy works.
Hmm.
It's as I said, they still want those really solid metrics and are treating it like ads or
Yes.
something, really concrete, and what outcomes are we going to see. So I think they're thinking about it for sure, and I think some are further down the line than others. I might see a geographical split too. I would say I feel like the UK is further behind generally in their understanding of
Hmm.
podcasts and podcast strategy than say America. I don't know if you see that.
Yeah, probably a little bit here. Well, I think, well, obviously America's huge, but I mean, you get just people tend to be. You get a lot more people who are more comfortable, kind of putting themselves out there. You've been in the UK and me being from Ireland. It's definitely a cultural thing too. Sometimes you have to learn. It's one thing I had to learn when I came here was like being reserved isn't going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely the clients that we have from America are definitely more comfortable to go and talk and to show those different sides of
Mhm.
themselves. It's us, from the UK can be a bit more British.
Yeah. Do you get any people who are saying like, "Oh, I'll do audio podcasts, but I don't want to be on screen." Do you ever get that?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Or it's audio, but why did the host have the camera on? And we have to set those expectations early on. Just be camera ready.
Yeah.
Be camera ready. Because even if they only put audio, they might put out clips. But
Mhm.
your most hosts are going to have that camera on, even if they don't use it. So think about your background. Don't have you washing up.
Yeah, exactly. And I would advise, I mean, go on the ones that are on all the platforms, video as well as audio, because I mean that gives you the greatest reach, obviously, and it gives you the greatest amount of content to leverage as well. So where do you see podcasting going, Victoria?
I think it's going to continue to grow. I mean, there's seems to be more and more every year. It's certainly a growing space as far as I see it. Whether that will change in terms of, I think there was less of a video element to start
Mhm.
with, and that looks to me like it's getting stronger. A lot
Yeah.
more of the podcasts that we work with, they're putting out video too. So we think that it will change, but I think that it will continue to grow as it's reaching the different platforms.
No, and I agree. And just think of the fantastic service. Like you said, you do like the Autism Moms podcast. I
Yes.
mean, I mean, think of in the past, like you couldn't find places to where you could hear the people that you needed in a very specific area or whatever. Like these things are so fantastic.
That's it. You can actually find the answers to the questions by looking on podcasts like I need to know something about. And you find it.
Mhm.
That's why I started that with my sister, because we were being asked so many questions. And we thought, we could put this out on a podcast and then it could just be there to help people. Yeah, I think podcasts are great.
Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. Well, listen, thanks you so much, Victoria, for today. All of Victoria's information will be below this video. But before we go, please do remind people about you and what you do.
Yeah, so I run a podcast booking agency where we will book people on aligned podcasts and help them maximize the strategy in the ways that we've talked about. And yeah, I have a page that I put together for your listeners if they want to connect, which is it'll be down below, I guess, but www.thebestpodcastguest.co.uk/sales-pop. And there's some different ways we can connect with some free resources.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I would encourage you to go check it out, and I'd encourage you to consider podcasting. And if you're in a marketing or PR department in an organization, you should get your executives on podcasts. Seriously. I mean, I think, as you said, I think we'll look back in, I don't know, well, everything moves so fast now. We'll probably look back in a year and say, oh, you see, look how podcasting has grown. So thanks again, Victoria. Thank you for watching and listening as usual. And I'll see you all again very soon. Thank you.